This weapon is brand new to the game, can be entirely bought on level 1 traders, and is fast becoming one of my favourite early wipe guns. Today I'll be showing you the best early wipe weapons at level 1 traders, and we're going to start with the two major differences from last wipe, beginning with the Uzi. Tarkov's latest 9mm submachine gun is purchasable on Peacekeeper 1 for just over 35,000 rubles equivalent in dollars and has some very interesting features. The most notable thing about this version of the Uzi, because there are 3 different guns under the same name, is that it is 600 RPM. That is incredibly slow, and there are only a few weapons around this fire rate, most notably the UMP as the most direct comparison. However, due to its low vertical recoil of 41, this combined with the low fire rate makes it incredibly controllable. Patch 15 is very different to the last one, primarily because of all of the armor changes. When we started up in the previous wipe, the armor plates only covered a small portion of the body, so you could get away with bad ammo and mediocre recoil and hope to hit the thorax hitbox where there was either no or very little armor. With the thorax now being entirely covered, as soon as players are wearing class 3 or class 4 armor, you will struggle to penetrate with most of the SMG cartridges, which means that aiming for headshots once more becomes the way to play with these guns. For that, the Uzi is amazing, and you even get a slightly larger magazine size than you do on other comparable weapons, with a 32 rounder coming by default with Peacekeeper's offering. You can't actually buy any more of these until higher trader levels, but having a 32 in the gun and 25 rounders elsewhere actually feels just fine, again because of the low fire rate. Once you have workbench level 1 in the hideout and can get into the weapon preset screen, you'll be pleasantly surprised to see that the Uzi can be modded in many more ways than you might expect for a weapon of this type. Most of these are locked off to players at the beginning of the wipe, so the most important one is the top rail called the Uzi Stormworks scope mount from Mechanic 1, which allows you to put on a red dot sight. I've been using this with the Fastfire Weaver base and a Burris Fastfire 3 reflex on top for a good portion of this wipe so far, and it's feeling pretty decent, but I'll likely swap out for something better once some more become available on the traders. Not only that, but there is another rail that you can attach to the bottom of the handguard as well, also on Mechanic, for only 1,000 rubles that lets you put on a laser or a flashlight as well. This is much more straightforward in terms of modding than something like the MP5 for example, and even has the option to improve the handguard with a vertical foregrip from Mechanic as well, which is the Uzi K-grip, although this isn't compatible with using a tactical device at the same time. Later on down the line, you can install things like threaded barrels on which to attach suppressors and change over the stocks to combinations that you would recognize from late wipes, such as the Advanced Tube and the Daniels Defense Plus butt pad, but these clearly come with much higher trader levels. Strangely, there are 2 sets of magazines for the Uzi, some labelled regular Uzi 9x19 and some labelled Uzi Pro. This doesn't make that much difference for the regular Uzi that you can buy from Peacekeeper 1, although using the regular Uzi 25 rounders keeps it as a 1x3, and the Uzi Pro turns it into a 2x3 instead because it has a down +1 size change modifier in its stats. The reason for this is that another variant of the Uzi, which is on Peacekeeper 2, the Uzi Pro pistol, is only compatible with the Uzi Pro versions of the magazines. This is the one with a much higher fire rate of 1075, securing it as the 4th fastest firing gun in the entire game behind the Glock 18C, the MP9N and the 45 Vector. This is clearly a very different proposition to the one that we're looking at on Peacekeeper 1 with 600 RPM. Just for reference, there is also a new Uzi barter on Mechanic 1 trading for an insect gas pipe, the blue one, which includes a suppressor and a laser by default. Given this gun is open bolt, I have a suspicion because of the way that Tarkov currently works that it won't be able to jam, so that's another benefit, and basically you just need to load the Uzi up with preferably PST or M882 from your starting stash, aim for the head and off you go. The other primary big change this wipe is moving the 9891 compact assault rifle down to Prapor level 1. This is not a new gun this wipe, but it was locked to a much higher trader level previously and is a little bit like a poor man's Val. Firing the 9x39 caliber, the only ammo that you can buy for this initially is FMJ, with 75 damage and 17 pen. It's a little bit lacking in the pen department, given that this weapon is not the easiest to control, but the damage is extremely solid. Unfortunately, this one is nowhere near as moddable as the Uzi, with a suppressor only available on Prapor 2, and the only magazine is the 20 round variety. In fact, this gun is almost the polar opposite to the Uzi. Given that it shoots at 900 RPM but has such a limited magazine capacity, I would actually suggest to use this weapon on semi-auto instead. It is possible to use a sight with this weapon using the dovetail mounts, and I usually suggest the Cobra mount to do so because this allows you to add a laser on the side to improve the performance of your point fire. Where this weapon becomes turbocharged is if you can find any ammunition at all for this that isn't FMJ. Even SP5 will defeat class 3 armor very easily. I managed to find a box of PAB-9, and in that case you can just fire at center of mass and not worry so much about hitting a headshot, which is a big advantage. You still retain the ability to turn full auto on in close quarters if you really just need to mag dump those 20 bullets as fast as possible, so there are ways to use this weapon a little bit flexibly, but personally my preference is more for the Uzi than the 9A91. Outside of these two choices, we have the more traditional options on Prapor 1 in the SMG category, being the Kedda, the PP19 and the PPSH. In my opinion, given the armor changes, you either want to be cutting through armor specifically, which is quite tough early with the SMG ammo available, or you want to be aiming for headshots, and out of the three, I personally prefer the PP19, which is somewhat similar to the Uzi in many ways. I know that some swear by the Kedda, but you can only get one 30 rounder in the gun when you buy it, and afterwards you can only buy 20s as backups, and with 900 RPM, those bullets also disappear extremely quickly. It's also not the easiest to mount sights to, and the adapter only comes on level 2 traders. The PP19 on the other hand can also take advantage of the Cobra dovetail to mount a laser without changing the handguard, and of course the PPSH is stuck with irons only. I think this one is just a little too wild for the precision needed this wipe. A better option if you do like higher RPM is the MP5 with its 800, because you can buy 30 round magazines at level 1 traders, and now that global limits have gone away, you can buy the universal low profile scope mount and attach an optic to this in your raids, which was really not possible before because it was always sold out. The only thing that you will struggle with is adding a laser, which is not really possible without changing over the handguard, but even the basic handguards are on level 2 traders. So moving into the assault rifles, it is difficult to go wrong with the AKS-74U from Prapor. This is another weapon where you can mod for everything that you need right on level 1 traders, with the B11 handguard being available as well as the Pilgrim top rail, so this combination allows you to mount an optic and then also a tactical device on the side. You can even add the cheap foregrip for a bit of extra ergo if you want. The 545 AKs, which have just received a buff on their ammo as well by the way, have a great benefit of being able to pick up ammo well above what you have available on the traders, as it is one of the most plentiful in-raid cartridges to find. In this way, you can often be running something with the power of a mid-game rifle very cheaply and extremely early by looking out for anything from PS in the early game to PP and beyond for the mid-game. Although the recoil is not particularly low on this weapon, the ability to power straight through other people's armor with these better bullets can't be ignored. After you complete one of Prapor's first non-ground zero tasks debut, you'll also be able to buy the UB variant, which comes with a suppressor straight away, of which very few other weapons do at this point in progression. Over on the USEC side, you will start with a couple of M4A1s, and although these are decent with M855, they are a bit difficult to mod, and until you complete Gunsmith Part 1, you can't even change the front post to not get in the way of many of the smaller red dots. This is broadly the same for the 45,000 ruble ADAR as well in semi-auto, but it can be nice if you do find a slightly longer range sight early. Last wipe, the AUG was a great contender despite the fact that its optic isn't really that good, but with the new recoil model it made it very usable, and the AUG naturally had extremely low recoil. Unfortunately, this appears to be nerfed both in terms of stats, now starting at 77 vertical recoil, and also in terms of price at $573, which is over 80,000 rubles. You also have the issue of not being able to get the 30 round AUG magazines at level 1 traders either, and so for me the issues that this weapon has now tips it into a more difficult category to justify. Moving up to the even more powerful calibers, we have the SKS from Prapor or Jaeger and the VPO-136 from Skier, all firing 7.62x39, as well as the 3.66 caliber on the VPO-209. I've not actually felt the need to use any of these guns yet, as I believe that the current recoil system overwhelmingly favours full auto weapons, especially early on when scopes are hard to come by. But with PS getting a decent buff on damage and 3.66 hitting extremely hard early wipe, if you prefer a semi-auto style of gameplay, these can definitely work. You'll probably need Jaeger 1 to use the VPO-209, as the 3.66 ammo is mostly sold on him, but once you do, TKM FMJ with 98 damage and 23 pen is very strong in the first week or two before class 4 armor is more prevalent. A major benefit of the VPO-209 is there is a suppressor available on Skier 1, not locked by any quests, whereas suppressing any of the 7.62x39 weapons requires finding one in raids, so they are much harder to come by. Both of these suffer from small magazines with only 10 rounders available when you buy them, so if you do want to use a bigger magazine for this type of AK style weapon, then make sure to save the 30 rounders in raid from scavs, because you can't get these on level 1 traders. You should also look out for PS and T45 ammo as well. You may have noticed that I have not touched on shotguns at all this time, and I think in the latest iteration of the armor change, shotguns are, well, just overall bad. With the extremely diminished amount of weak spots on even a primitively armoured PMC, the low penetration of the early shotgun cartridges along with their ranges makes using them an uphill battle. As for Bolties, there are only really two choices, either the Mosin or the VPO-215. The only 54R bullet you can get early these days is HPBT with 102 damage and 23 pen, and although you can grab better in raid as is usually the case with the Eastern ammos, I still tend to use the VPO-215. This is primarily because I prefer the iron sights for doing Jaeger's early Tarkov shooter quests, and also the same suppressor for the 209 fits to this weapon as well, meaning that it's easier to use without drawing in too much PMC attention. So overall, in patch 15, early on I really liked the Uzi and the other 9mm low recoil headshotter SMGs in the face of much stronger armor in general, others like the PP19 and the MP5. As class 4 armor becomes more available to our opponents, I'll probably start using the 74Us instead, given their ease of modding plus the availability of ammo to more easily beat them, although for longer range raids there is clearly some value to the SKS and the VPO-136, even with the difficulty of acquiring suppressors, because decent 7.62x39 is relatively easy to find. As a reminder, the links to the free music used in this video are in the description and the pinned comment, and if you listen on Spotify it helps to support the channel. So next up, go and check out my rundown of all the ammo stat changes this wipe, including the 545 and 7.62 buffs, along with the 5.56 and 9mm nerfs. Otherwise, as usual, a big shout out to all my patrons, and as always, have fun in your raids.